Welcome everybody to our virtual Innovator Coffee Series. I can't wait for you to all meet Crystal and a surprise guest that we've pulled into it as well. We're just going to let everybody join the Zoom invite. So thanks for joining early. And if you've got about a couple minutes, so if you want to take a minute or two to go get a coffee or a water or whatever else, you got a couple minutes to do so while we let everybody else join the Zoom. Right, welcome everyone. We're going to give everybody a few more minutes, so feel free to get settled and looking forward to a jam-packed agenda with Crystal, who I've gotten to work with closely, and I can't wait to share more on her story and all the things that she's been able to innovate with Nike. All right, welcome everyone. You're all jumping onto the Zoom quickly. It's always, even though we've been virtual for so long, it's always nice to get onto Zoom easily. We're just going to give people a couple more minutes and then we'll jump right into it. But for those who are joining, feel free to introduce yourself on the chat, share your LinkedIn as well. There's lots of incredible DE&I and talent leaders from all over the world that are joining us. So always a great opportunity to build your own network with some peers from a number of different organizations. So drop in your LinkedIn, say hello on the chat, and we'll just give everybody a couple more minutes. All right. Great. So for those that have just joined us, welcome. Please use the chat to introduce yourself, share your LinkedIn, an awesome way to, again, build your network and meet some other peers from different organizations. We've got a jam-packed agenda here for the next 55 minutes or so. And so just for those that have joined, we'll also share a recording of this at the end, so you can stay engaged and you don't have to scramble to write all your notes. We will share a recording so that you can have for yourself, but also be able to share with your colleagues as well. Okay, we'll just start in about 30 or 60 seconds, just waiting for a few more people to get onto this. Okay. So let's jump into it. And first, I think it's important just to do a land acknowledgement based on where 10KC is built. So we acknowledge the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississauga of the Credit, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto, where our head office is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. And so important to acknowledge that. So welcome to everyone. And for those that are new to 10KC, our organization is all about democratizing opportunity. We know that relationships like mentoring and networking are really make or break for whether people get career opportunities, whether they learn, or whether organizations build the best cultures. It really comes down to relationships and informal experiences. And we built our organization as a diversity-owned company to be able to democratize opportunity through these experiences. And today, as part of our virtual Innovator Series, we get to recognize Crystal Neill, who has fully innovated mentoring to drive powerful talent and DE&I goals. And our surprise guest is Dion Goodman, who was actually one of the reasons we got to meet Crystal initially. And so really excited to introduce you, Dion, who heads up D&I partnerships, focus development, all of the ERGs and diversity networks, and D&I generally at Nike. And so without further ado, I'd love to introduce Dion and to share a few words. And over to you, Dion.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Dave. A pleasure to join you all today from around the world. Greetings from Los Angeles, California area on my end. As Dave mentioned, my name is Dion Goodman. My pronouns are he, him, and his. Today, I'm wearing a black hooded sweatshirt with white drawstrings and a white Nike logo swoosh. And my virtual background is simply a blurred background of my home office, which is full of children's toys right now because my daughter is everywhere. So I sit on Nike's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion team and serve as the senior director, again, leading teams that support all of our external diversity partnerships, our focus development team, as well as leading the overall strategy for our employee resource groups. I also have the pleasure of working with your guest speaker today, Ms. Crystal Neill, who leads the focus development arm on my team. Dave reached out and offered me the opportunity to share a few words about the incredible work Crystal is leading for Nike, and I jumped at the chance to do so. So thank you, Dave. Crystal joined my team summer of last year, I believe, and brought with her a wealth of knowledge and expertise in the employee development space. Crystal has a keen ability to dissect a problem, determine the needs, and set forth an intentional and tailored strategy to execute against. She's always very thoughtful in her approach, anticipating the needs unique to her targeted audience and delivering a premium experience for her clients. No exception with her work in leading our mentorship program in partnership with 10,000 Coffees, where over the past year, she and her team have successfully launched 4 cohorts across the enterprise, impacting roughly 1,000 Nike team members. This work ties directly to our DEI goals around development, taking a focused approach to meet the needs of our internal diverse team members as it relates to their career growth. The number of emails and kudos I receive tied to Crystal and her team's work is incredible. It's overwhelming, literally, and I've teased her about it quite a bit, but it speaks to the appetite our team members have in making these authentic connections and the value they place on these relationships. So I'm very excited and can't wait to see the impact this program will continue to have on our retention, promotion, and overall development of its participants. So you are in no doubt in for a treat today, your conversation with Crystal, and I'll pass it back. Thank you all so much.
Wow. I mean, congrats, Crystal, on everything. And it's awesome to have you in the virtual innovator spotlight. And Dion, thanks for joining us. We'll let you drop off and really appreciate those words. And so I'll set a bit of an agenda, and then Crystal would love for you to do an introduction. But today, I've got a lot of questions, some that you've submitted, some that I know lots of people are thinking of. But please do use the chat or the Q&A to ask Crystal questions as well. And I've got a live feed on my phone, so I'll be trying my best to get to as many audience questions as we can. But with that, Crystal, congrats again, and would love for you to say an intro as we hop in.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dave. And hello, everyone. Thanks, Dion, for your kind words. Was that part of this session recorded? Because I might have to play it at our year-end review. No, and also welcome everyone. I'm not sure if you are coming in hot from another meeting or if this is your first meeting of the day, but thanks for being here. So feel free to check in with your body, drop your shoulders, relax your jaw muscles, take a deep breath or two, and settle in. I'm excited to be here. My name is Crystal Neill. My pronouns are she, her, and I identify as a white cisgendered female. I have long, dark brown hair, parted in the middle, wearing tortoiseshell glasses and a tangerine, lavender, and cream geometric print top with a couple of gold necklaces. And my vocation is innovating community through radical benevolence. And I have the privilege of living that out within the community of work by leading the development pillar for DEI at Nike in service of creating fair playing fields here. And I've been at Nike for over 16 years, and I'm certified in transformational leadership and intensive journaling based on the work of Carl Jung and Ira Progoff, and have a background in leadership development and design thinking. And I was asked to come over to the DEI team in January of 2021 to lead in this space. And literally on day one, I was in a meeting as we got started, just planning our strategy and map for mentorship. And now we're here, Dave.
Yes, well, and I think that's a great segue. There's people here from all different maturities, I guess, of early stage or late stage mentoring, but maybe just take a few minutes to tell us kind of where was mentoring kind of before 10KC, and then, I'll never forget the first meeting we had, and maybe speak to kind of the after 10KC, but would love just to hear kind of the journey that you've been on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the question. At Nike, we had several groups running separate mentorship programs at Nike in smaller pockets that didn't necessarily have an initial DEI component built in, but had some really great things happening and some inconsistencies across the board. And we connected with the leaders who created these programs, as well as conducted focus groups with those who had participated in these specific programs, and really gleaned from their learnings and used them as our muse to create a new game plan with a centrally focused, business-centered program. And as we look at the DEI strategy for Nike, and one of those big components is empowering and enabling all employees to realize their career aspirations. It's a key priority under the development pillar specifically, and mentorship links directly back to that because of the learnings from previous groups who had run those mentorship programs. And our new game plan that we created was developed with 5 guiding principles based on what we learned from folks who had gone through previous mentorship programs. And we wove those 5 guiding principles throughout the 9-month journey itself, that also serve as key outcomes. And those are creating safe spaces, building trust and leadership, strengthening the team play mentality, growing cross-cultural awareness, and accessing more career opportunities. And it went from mentorship in smaller pockets across the company to a business-centered application-based program to really focus on visibility and career development for both mentees and mentors in service of accelerating the flow of talent through the organization. And like I said, we actually designed a formal program that spans 9 months. One of the things that we heard was, hey, I don't know necessarily when to stop this relationship and how to do that. So creating ceremony and intentionality around an actual formal program really helped as we looked at how do we set mentors and mentees up for success before they even meet. And that's really where we linked arms with you, Dave, and your team. So as we created a 2-week fundamentals development journey prior to the mentor-mentee matching, that includes interactive workshops that cover a whole host of topics like intersectionality and covering, the 6 traits of inclusive leadership, how to tell the story of you in a way that's a catalyst for your career, psychological safety, navigating difficult conversations, the power of feedback, as well as ongoing development moments throughout, really to set our participants up for success and create a mutually beneficial experience for both mentors and mentees. And so as we were creating that 9-month journey for our participants, knowing we would continue to expand to broader audiences in the future, the things that were keeping me up at night, and subsequently my team, I'm sure, were how are we going to effectively match folks? How do we continue to engage in a way that is not disruptive and still equips participants with what they need as they go along their journey together? And how do we effectively measure our progress and tell the story? And as you know, Dave, you kind of alluded to this as we entered in our first meeting with you, Nitai, and the team. You were discussing how we could partner. And I mentioned, I think I just had one single tear fall down my face because of the relief that you and your team brought. You know, imagine, you know, you mentioned we have over 1,000 people actively participating in our program in 4 cohorts so far, with more to come. So imagine having to manually match mentors and mentees with one another based on their self-identified areas of development needs and areas of expertise, with 442 people in one cohort. My team and I, we can tell you the relief that even just that portion has brought has been remarkable, because it would take days, literally, for us to do that manually, if not weeks. But having that process automated has taken those manual time constraints out of the process. And having the process automated, not only for matching, but you automate, as you know, push notifications each month to prepare mentors and mentees for their monthly one-on-ones. Those are some of the things we hear back from people that say, oh my gosh, I had the best conversation with my mentee or my mentor, because we both came to the table ready to talk about what great goal setting looks like and how do we go forward from here. And then also pulse surveys that you send after each of our fundamental sessions and each month's one-on-one session really help us course correct immediately, rather than waiting an entire 9 months to say, uh-oh, we need to course correct, and you can't, you know, retrofit something. So being able to course correct and reinforce what we're doing well, rather than waiting till the end to see those results, really has made the experience, not only for us and our stakeholders that are active participants in our programming, but for our audiences and our participants, really seamless.
So I have 100 questions to break that down, and it's amazing. I'll say 2 things. First is we did record this, so we'll have it packaged up for your performance review season, no problem, from that introduction. And 2 is the tear of joy. If anybody wants to shed a tear of joy, I'll have Nitai share his email in the chat so that everyone can email Nitai and he can help you all bring a tear of joy to go through the same thing. No, that I remember we sat down and we were thinking of how to match, you know, people, and not just saving time and effort, but also removing bias, given, you know, whatever is manual often comes with that. So we have a couple of questions later in this webinar that I'm going to jump in on that in more detail. But maybe for folks, you know, something that often comes up is kind of like how mentoring drives goals. And for those on the call who are trying to explain to executives why they should have a structured, scalable mentoring program, maybe touch on kind of the business case of that and how and why mentoring matters.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that question. And I would also like to say that if you want to make Nitai from 10,000 Coffees shed a tear, talk about Broadway musicals, because that will happen very quickly. No, but to your question, Dave, empowering and enabling all employees to realize their career aspirations is a key priority within our DEI strategy. And that strategy maps right back to Nike's DEI strategy. And anyone can look at what our goals are for 2025 on our purpose.nike.com website. And everything that we do within the mentorship program should and does map directly back to how do we empower and enable all employees to realize those career aspirations. We know that those impact retention, promotion, strategic lateral moves. And by providing sacred space really for participants to have access, visibility, and career development in a way that's intentional, that in a way feels very catered and personal. And our DEI strategy includes 4 pillars anchored in community, representation, education, and development. And mentorship is one of the key pieces of work that falls in that development pillar, and it impacts the other pillars as well. So if you think about, hey, accessing the flow of talent within an organization, you're hitting representation. If you're thinking about the 2-week fundamentals and how we set our mentors and mentees up for success before they even meet, we're providing education and we're building community within the community of work. You know, we hear, and you know this, Dave, we have, gosh, over 1,000 folks that are active in the program, really within 9 months. Since we've just launched, and our 2-week fundamental sessions receive a consistent 98% satisfaction rate, as do our mentor matches. We have a 98% satisfaction rate of our mentorship community who see value in their one-on-one conversations with each other. And we see and hear things like, we need this rolled out to all of Nike. When can I get this? When do we have this? When can this come to Europe? And we hear things like, in my 25 years at Nike, I've never experienced training like this before, and it's by far the best. Gosh, you know, the connections that people make in our 2-week fundamentals continue to last outside of those and outside of their one-on-one matching as well. And so we're also building further connections, not just the one-on-one and mentorship, but as we think about networking and the power of networking when it comes to furthering promotion and retention of individuals. And we all know that attrition costs a company. So if you look at your attrition rates, not just within, you know, overall, but as you lift up and look at, hey, what does it look like in the first 45 to 90 days? Mentorship actively impacts those attrition rates, because if you link arms with someone and bring them along, you immediately create a sense of belonging. You immediately create clarity on roles and expectations, and you create inspiration to stay and inspiration to find who you are and where you want to go. And you can't do that by yourself.
Yeah, I couldn't, it's been amazing to see how, you know, within the platform, how there's obviously the matching component, but there's also through group matching, you can do targeted events for training. And you're totally right that oftentimes it's the ability to meet some of those peers and colleagues through the program that are kind of like that wraparound support to just the core mentoring offering. And we're going to dive into a few of those in more details. But one of the big questions I know people had before they came on here is it's about reach. And so often, I mean, you in under 9 months, about 1,000 people from high potential groups and diverse groups have joined. Maybe some advice for the people on here, because like we hear oftentimes a lot of people have mentoring programs, but they usually reach a couple dozen people, if that. And even of those people, oftentimes they don't have the data to know, are they going well? How are they progressing? And so it's a bit of a mystery. What would be some of the advice you have about how technology's helped you reach more colleagues? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, great question, Dave. And it is hard. that is one of the things, like, how do you scale something when you are from a large organization? How do you scale something when you're not in a large organization that continues to have consistent impact? And one of the things that we did is, rather than saying, hey, everyone, we have a mentorship program, join it if you want, or hey, this is exciting. Part of the feedback that we received from mentorship programs that were happening in those small pockets were, I need something that's a little more intentional and something that will help accelerate where I am to where I want to go. And through that, it was really the discovery of, if we launch in central business focused areas, for instance, if we have all of apparel launch a mentorship program as a cohort, and receive communication from their VPs and inviting them in, so that leadership, the leadership buy-in and evangelizing, if you will, of the program really helps. So connecting in and partnering, we have DEI BPs and HR BPs who are critical stakeholders in this program that help act as conduits between us and the business, and really help us make those business cases for having a DEI focused mentorship program. So if I'm sitting in finance and I receive a communication from my VP saying, hey, we have this program and here's what it's going to look like, and here's my commitment to mentorship, and invites people to join, then you actually have more reach, and it's even more impactful reach. And then with our mentors, so our mentees, it's an application-based process. For our mentors, they're nominated. We have criteria that our mentors need to meet in order to be included in the program, and they're nominated by our VPs and their plus ones on their teams. So we're bringing in people that are already committed to mentorship in the workplace as mentors, and who are committed to moving diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace as well.
And it's been awesome just to see the scale that we got when you automate some of those processes and help guide people along. But that's really helpful. And I think often what we see from mentoring programs, and I'll kind of set this up and then I'm going to move to the next slide, but
Sure.
We often see when people are running mentoring programs, they're really manual, but the risk of that is obviously time, and it can take weeks to try to do it correctly. And oftentimes it's actually, even with weeks of time, you can't really get the matches right without technology. But I think more importantly is these manual programs have a lot of bias. So people that look like each other, people that have like similarities, where you actually want to use technology to have self-ID'd goals to drive it. And so we often see that as a big challenge. The second is just a lack of visibility. So people don't really know what they should have conversations on and what those should look like, which we'll get to in a second. The spoiler alert is Crystal solved all three of these. And the third is around just like making it meaningful, and how do you kind of guide people through a journey where it's not just like kind of a random, we heard Crystal say earlier, people showed up prepared. And so we see that these are the kind of the core challenges where it's with all the best intentions, but without kind of the right solution to build, manage, and measure, you kind of miss out on these. And so let's start with smart matching. And I know that was one of the initial, that single tier of joy that Nitai and team brought to you.
Yes.
But one of the key elements of the platform, and you'll see some poll questions hopping up here for the audience, so feel free to just get into those poll questions as they come. But we wanted to remove bias. And so maybe you could start with just like how you set up some of those smart selection criteria, how people were able to, like, what did they choose from, and how did you create the matches that had a 98% satisfaction score?
Yeah, thanks for that question. And it really, one of the things that I love about the 10,000 Coffees platform is the ability to customize areas of expertise as well as areas of development within the profile. And some of those must-haves for matching, obviously an area of expertise versus an area of development that have been self-identified, and they must match within their function. But then also prioritizing the matching at least a couple of bands apart as we think about levels within the company, as well as prioritizing matching with someone within a 3-hour time difference if possible. And really all of the matching criteria is pre-populated for users and is done automatically through the platform based on, and Nitai can correct me because I am not a tech person, but I've been learning a ton about technology, especially this platform. But it's really based on user data that is self-identified, and folks can share as deep of information as they'd like, or as not as much information as they would like either. And really self-selecting based on personal interests and goals so that we can find really the most relevant match for them that meets the criteria that I previously mentioned. And through that, we have consistently a 98% match quality score.
And I think as most people on the webinar would know, it's really hard to get a 90% score from end users, especially when you have hundreds. Yeah, on anything. We've all, not in math, not often in mentoring, but I think something that our engineering and product team thinks about every day is how do we make sure every experience is high value. And so we want to see more of these 80%. On average, it's about 95%, but it's over all these cohorts, Crystal and team have leveraged the ability to set some rules. So like Crystal, like what you said is, 3-hour time zone, like let's not match people in Europe with somebody on Pacific time because it's unlikely they'll have a successful, time zones wouldn't be great for them. But then how do you also look at function? And Crystal, what you shared earlier about maybe seeing people who are a few levels above within your function. And so it's this balance of allowing Crystal to set up the right rules to remove bias and create outcomes, but then on the other hand, allow employees to control their own journey, to goal set, to get as deep into self-ID kind of like goals that they have. And you combine that together, and that's really where the magic happens. And so I know there's been a lot of questions on matching. That's a bit of a deep dive on how it all happens. And there's no tech requirements. You're able to update it and see the data with each match. But we've, big congratulations on the 98%. And it also doesn't take any effort. So no more Excel spreadsheets trying to match people together.
Yeah, and I will say along those lines, so we have the matching from you all, and then because of our close partnership with our DEI BPs and HR BPs, before mentors and mentees receive notification of who they've been matched with, we have our HR BPs vet those matches to ensure we don't have anyone matched with someone within a reporting structure of another person, or anything else that may seem like a conflict. And then we just provide back to the 10,000 Coffees team, hey, we need to switch these folks, or, we're seeing a reporting structure challenge here, and it's changed within the day. And then folks receive notification of who they've been matched with.
Yeah, well said. And we just had one of our second poll questions. So thanks for those that have participated, but 63% of people on the call have a clear board level D&I mandate. So as you think of that, mentoring is just a key pillar of that. And I do, we'll share the Nike DE&I goal link that Crystal mentioned in the chat so that you can check it out. But there's a lot of inspiration around the 2025 commitments that the team has built that are quite inspiring, if I say so myself. So something else that we should dive into is like guiding. And so often people kind of match, they put their blood, sweat, and tears into making that match happen, and then kind of you're on your own. And something that we were able to build as part of the module is to guide people through each of those conversations. Maybe talk Crystal, about how you created each of those conversations and how that kind of journey happened?
Sure. So we knew that after the 2-week fundamentals, we didn't want to just cut people off and say, hey, go be free and have fun. So one of the things we did is partner with your team to create those monthly connects that are really those guides that get people to think critically and not just, I know that I've been in this space before with a mentor where I come in with a blank notebook and then they say, where do you want to be in 5 years? I'm like, I don't know, and really not having any sort of, structure to the conversation and providing guides that continue to build, not just on the 2-week fundamentals, but on each other as they move through their 9-month journey with each other, really helps them come into those conversations with a plan of, ooh, hey, here's some questions I should be asking as a mentor, and here are some things that I should be asking and thinking about as a mentee, and thinking about my career from a strategic and personal lens. We all know that we live a lot of our lives at work, right? And so how do we provide people with the ability to lift up and look at the whole landscape of their career trajectory of where they are now, where they want to go, and also the landscape of their life. And providing these monthly prompts allows people to do that in a meaningful, relevant way. And it's optional, right? So we're not forcing people to use whatever it is. We're saying, hey, here's an option. And for the majority of people, use it. And then we also, along the way, have those pulse surveys that say, hey, is this working? How did your one-on-one go about goal setting this month? And through those pulse surveys along the way, one of the things that we discovered was folks in our cohorts wanted to come back together in the middle of their 9-month journey. And so we actually have our first cohort connection tomorrow afternoon with cohort 2, because we have planned a cohort or a capstone at the end of the 9-month journey. And folks were saying that's way too long to stay apart because of the connections they've built with one another up front and over Slack. But also as they share best practices over Slack, saying, hey, I use this 10,000 coffees worksheet or this nudge. What was your conversation like? So they're connecting not only with their mentor-mentee over those conversations, but they're also talking about them over Slack with one another in the broader group.
Yeah, so awesome. And I think we see so often that people miss these guides. And I think so often it just makes everything really explicit, which especially from a DE&I lens, the more difference you might have between your members, the better it is to create frameworks and guides. What was, just as I'm kind of putting you on the spot on this, but what were some of the success stories that you heard from some of these smart nudges and how it helped people get to the right conversations? Anything come to mind?
Oh my gosh, yes, actually, you're putting me on the spot, but I have an email that I'm pulling up right now. Let me find it. It was a woman who has been at Nike for a very long time and is a mentor. And she sent to me an email. I'm going to read it to you without giving away information, but the subject title was Best Session Yet. Goals. Thank you and your team for providing such good questions and great articles to inform this session. Most productive one yet. Happy New Year. Cannot wait for my next one-on-one. And we receive emails and Slack messages and to Dion's point, he's probably nauseated at the notes that he gets throughout the program, because they are so impactful. And like I said, it isn't just like a contractual relationship. It's really personal as we set people up for success along the way.
Well, that I put you on the spot, but yeah, what can I say? What can I say? You're more prepared. That's amazing. And I think that's one of the biggest goals we see is, and you'll see in the poll question, informal development offers, and really informal is just things that are not in the classroom, relationships, mentoring networks. And what I'll say to that email, Crystal, and thanks so much for sharing it, is oftentimes people think, well, like relationships and mentoring should not have structure because it's informal. That's actually not true.
Right.
Informal actually needs almost more structure than classroom and course-based learning, because people aren't naturally good at it or comfortable at it. And I think it's so amazing to see that email and that feedback, because the goal is to guide people and give them structure, and they can color outside the lines and they can go wherever they'd like. But as long as you give them a starting point, people that might not share that much in common will get to that nice moment of the best meeting yet, which is amazing. And so on the informal, there's a poll question here about some of the non-classroom or course-based or informal programs you offer. So would love to see what everyone's doing. But yeah, Crystal, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did notice a question in chat. It's amazing. I wonder who manages the day-to-day of the program and how large your team is. Initially, it was a team of one as we kicked off, but I say that just as myself, but I do have 2 people that work with me in this space. We have a coordinator, Zach Kovan, who manages all of the behind the scenes work, and he is a master at what he does and has been a huge lifesaver. And then Tanya Isabel, who is our program manager, manages also the kind of a level up of the program management pieces. And we are currently building a bench of facilitators as we look at the 2-week fundamentals in order to create a sustained approach to the program.
And that team, Crystal, outside the mentoring program, just like the 30 seconds, like what are the kind of key pillars that team's running?
Yeah, so the Zach and Tanya and myself, basically, we continue to connect with our DEIBPs and HRBPs to ensure they have everything they need as we socialize mentorship with their functional VPs and teams and leadership teams. So we're prepping and ensuring readiness. That's another thing that we've done, is we created a readiness checklist for our DEIBPs and HRBPs to assess whether or not a function is even ready to launch. So you also have to look at your organization's overall calendar. Are you oversaturating the marketplace with launches where we have return to the workplace coming up? So ensuring that we aren't having anything big come from mentorship during that time as people refine their footing in that space, as well as partnering along the way with 10,000 Coffees to ensure that you all have what you need, and managing our applications and nomination forms. We use Microsoft Forms, if anybody needs to know, and for those, and continue to partner with our stakeholders to ensure that folks have what they need to be set up for success. And then as we come through, they're setting up our 2-week fundamentals, all of those sessions. They're managing and helping plan and prepare for facilitation, train the trainers, as well as we look at, once we have our initial matches from 10,000 Coffees, partnering with our HRBPs to validate those matches and make any changes that need to happen. And then, of course, along the way, connecting in, providing resources through Slack channels with our cohorts. Hey, here's an article on mentorship, or hey, here's an article on what's happening in the workforce outside of Nike. Here's a great tool on providing feedback. So ensuring that people feel engaged without being too disruptive along the way. And then also planning our capstone events that happen at the end of the 9-month journey, and ensuring that we stay connected and provide people with what they need along the way.
Amazing. An awesome team. So something else that came up, and I know we've had some experiences, making it really easy for employees to use, but also to not introduce like a new platform. And so wanted to just hear from you kind of how easy it's been for employees to use, and like how they're able to access it, and just like how it's worked with your IT team, knowing that a lot of people on the call would love a lot of these things, but probably the first question is, how does it actually work? And so what did that look like for you, and how's that going?
Yeah, thanks for that, Dave. And that's another key component at Nike, is partnering with our global tech team to ensure that 10,000 Coffees has that you all have what you need when it comes to firewalls, or having access to emails. And one of the things that 10,000 Coffees has to provide for us is privacy, as we're looking at legal and all of the layers of everything that I won't bore everyone with. But we have linked really close arms with our global tech team as well, as we look to scale the program too. So as we think about our program as it is today, it is for US-based employees who are in an HQ and or territory office. And so as we look to scale the program and look forward at how we can expand it and still create something that is flexible, scaled, with high touch engagement for our employees who are in retail locations, who sit in our distribution centers, our RMI, which is our airbag manufacturing locations, and our geographies outside of the US, in partnership with global technology, and our DEI BPs and HRBPs and 10,000 Coffees, ensuring that we leverage design thinking to map out that flexible plan that still has high touch engagement as we look to expand further.
Yeah, it's been, I think, for everybody, it's something that is a well-oiled machine now, is to just work within it and make sure that, you know, for all the participants, they just use their Nike email. There's no new like app that they have to log into. And looking at how, like Crystal had shared earlier, like being able to leverage things like Workday, because it's better together with platforms like Workday. So we won't go too much further in IT, because we'll you know, we love our IT colleagues, but IT can be a bit tough. So we'll keep going through it all.
But I will say, if I can, Dave, sorry, what I will say is there have been times where we've been like, what is that? Or what is that? And as with anything, we're all human beings, and we're all fallible, and none of us are perfect. But what I think has been really great about our partnership with you and with our stakeholders is the ability to say, okay, time out. What is this looking like? What is, you know, how do we get from here to here? And really setting a foundation of trust at the beginning helps us do that, so that, you know, we can ping each other on Slack, or we can text one another or WhatsApp and say, hey, what about this? Or hey, what about this? It's become one broader team, as opposed to us throwing something over to 10,000 Coffees, or throwing something over to tech and letting things happen behind the scenes without us having visibility. We've become one extended team, which has created a better program for our stakeholders and our participants as well.
Yeah, it truly feels like we're all on one team innovating this together. And Yeah, big shout out to everyone that I know you and I are on this, but of course there's a great team that's just been, innovating on all fronts. And something something that you brought up earlier was how you kind of like through the platform, you can actually see progress. So you can actually see how all of these cohorts with all of these participants, how it's going. And you brought up something earlier that was so good, where people often launch their programs and then they're just like, hopefully it's going well. And then in 12 months, it may or may not have went well, or you just never really know. How was that different once you launched the platform? And how did you get visibility into all of these cohorts, without it just being a mystery?
Yeah, thank you for that. And we work with the 10,000 Coffees team. One of the things is with single sign-on and not having another app to sign into or something else to sign into, it creates that seamless experience for our participants. Oh, I have a pulse survey from 10,000 Coffees about the 2-week fundamentals, or about this month's one-on-one with my mentor or mentee. They get used to the cadence of those pulse surveys along the way, so that it isn't lost in an email, it isn't lost in translation, but they're expecting those pulse surveys. And because the program is new, we're looking at, hey, how are things working now and in the now of these 9 months? And as we sunset our first cohort last week with our capstone celebration, we'll begin tracking the short and long-term impacts to retention, promotion, strategic lateral moves, and we'll internally report out as we collect that data. And so, and that's where we partner with not only 10,000 Coffees, but with our internal HR and talent management teammates.
And did any, I know you talked about the capstone, where we saw like each of these conversations, every member gets a conversation guide and also a feedback nudge. And to what Crystal saw earlier, which we love to hear, is kind of midway through the program, in those feedback, people say, I want to get together with the other folks. And so, boom, you can do that and you get that visibility. Was there any other kind of aha moments that you've seen kind of mid-program as a result of those nudges or some of these guides?
I think the aha, definitely the big one was, hey, we want to come back together. As in the middle of those 9 months, we thought people were like happy to be on our own, kind of going out, but the tone that we've set from the beginning, people crave that type of connection. And as we think about the last 2 years, if it has taught us anything, it's how to innovate community. And that this program has innovated community. And seeing that through the feedback that we get from those pulse surveys of, I want to continue to be a part of this community. How do we continue to be a part of that? I think that was a big surprise for me, because people are busy, right? And we all know that we're all busy. We all have things that we want to do and need to do. But the fact that we knew people would find value in the program because we asked what they needed and designed for those needs, leveraging design thinking, but we didn't realize how much people craved that type of connection, even in the virtual space.
Yeah, totally. And it's, we see it so often where we're always learning about innovating community. And if the pandemic didn't throw, a real curveball to accelerate that, it's going to continue to change with hybrid. And I think we often hear partners who have no idea how it's going. And it's just such a risk, because everyone should be learning with each conversation that, goes through. And I think it's only been 9 months, but there's been so many different levers pulled and kind of knobs turned to just continue to improve in such an agile way. And so another kind of hats off on that front. And I think, of course, within each cohort, there's the data, but you also get kind of the overall data, which you've briefly mentioned, can help us track retention impacts. We've always known mentoring creates retention for all the reasons that you mentioned earlier. But how has kind of all of the data at the highest level across all cohorts helped you report, helped you kind of manage leaders? Like, how has it enabled you, and any aha moments on that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that my team can attest to this is when we're sharing the results of the program and we say we have a 98% satisfaction rate with matches and we have a 98% satisfaction rate with the 2-week fundamentals, people hear that. But then when we say, yeah, we have a 2-week fundamentals where mentors and mentees will come, once a day for 2 weeks and spend 60 to 90 minutes with us, immediately we hear, we don't have time to do that. I don't have time to do that. And how many times a month do I have to meet with my mentor or mentee? And it's once. But people start to get overwhelmed when they look at the bigger picture. But as soon as they attend our kickoff, where we not only introduce the program, but we talk about intersectionality and covering, and we make it personal, and we provide that psychologically safe space to learn together. Then we start seeing people say, oh, I have time for these. Oh, I have time for these. And then we start seeing, from the data that your team shares, we get a packet from you, as you know, that shows the percentage of satisfaction with the 2-week fundamentals itself, but then what those comments are around why it's working. And we can share those packets with our stakeholders and say, hey, these are the sound bites. So not only taking the data of the percentage, but those sound bites really help us tell the story of the why behind the numbers. And we can't get, we can't get into retention rates or anything like that, but within that, saying, hey, if you're taking 9 months out of your time and investing in a platform and investing in a team that can manage and run this mentorship program, and these are the satisfaction rates, and these are the stories that people are telling, it will impact the bottom line eventually. As we look at growth, as we look at retention, as we look at promotion, and as we look at accelerating the flow of talent within those participating functions, it's a matter of time as you see the impact to, that bottom line that we will see bubble up. We're already seeing the impact of that.
Incredible. So somehow we're at time, Crystal. So I'm going to fast track from here.
Sure.
But I mean, first off, is congratulations. Like the stories of advancing diverse talent and helping create so many career moments has been incredible. And in 9 months from launching, nothing happens in under a year in most places. And to build, deploy, and measure with such impact is incredible. So congratulations, and thanks for being a part of this to inspire others to do the same. And thanks everyone for joining. You can book a demo to see any of this live in action. We can make sure that all of you get to meet Nitai to shed a tear of joy. We'll clear his calendar for everybody. And he's the customer success lead that's worked so closely with Nike. But yeah, really thanks again, Crystal, and congrats on all the impact you've had, and looking forward to seeing more organizations be able to advance and also meet their D&I commitments that so many people have signed. So with that, have a great afternoon in Portland, and looking forward to what's ahead.
Thanks, Dave. And thanks everyone for joining.